So I'm Howard Friedman. I'm the director of the Jewish Community Library, which is a program of Jewish learning works. And I'm very happy to welcome you to this virtual program with Yael Kanarek and Tamar Biala, centered on their extraordinary Toratah project. So much of what we do at the library is made possible by the Friends of the Jewish Community Library, who are the library's single largest source of support. And I hope you'll consider becoming a friend by giving at any level at friendsofthejcl.org. Today's event is made possible in part by longtime friend of the library, Anne Germanicos, who's here with us. Before I introduce our presenters, some quick technical notes. Automated closed captioning can be accessed by clicking the CC button at the bottom of your screen and selecting Show Subtitles, or in some interfaces, the option is View Full Transcript. And you can turn off those subtitles by clicking the CC button and choosing Hide Subtitles. Be aware that when Hebrew terms come up, you can expect a lot of gibberish to be generated. Everybody will be muted during the program except our presenters, but there will be an opportunity for questions and answers at the end of the program. And you can feel free to put your questions in the chat and I'll relay them time permitting, or we may be able to also have people ask questions in person or audibly. I learned about Beit Toratah a couple of years ago and have had the chance to hear Yael share nuggets from it. And it's just incredible to me as a way to think about language and as a means of grasping in an absolutely new way how the stories that shape us are so fundamentally infused with conceptions of gender. I'm thrilled that the library is able to help share this work further. Yael Kanarek, who is joining us from Manhattan, is the creator, director, and translator of Beit Toratah, which she founded in 2016. As an artist in multiple media, she focuses on the relationship between language and form, using text in large-scale sculpture, jewelry, and internet art. She holds an MFA from Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute and teaches net art in the MFA program at Pratt Institute. Tamar Biala, who joins us from Jerusalem and works on the Beit Toratah project as co-editor, blogger, translator, and educator, teaches in various Batei Midrash, rabbinical schools, and adult education programs, both in the United States and Israel. She is the co-editor and editor, respectively, of the first and second volumes of the Hebrew language edition of Dirshuni, Women's Midrash. And earlier this year, she published an English version of this work as Dirshuni Contemporary Women's Midrash, which was published by Brandeis University Press. It's a tremendous book, which you can actually borrow from our library. And now, Yael and Tamar, I give you the floor.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Howard, for having us. It's also nice to see some of our own Beit Toratah community here. So some familiar faces, which is great. Just a little bit of background. So why did I start doing this crazy, super intense process of regendering the Bible? So first of all, what did we actually do? What did I actually do? What I did is, for most of the stories, I reversed the genders of, so all the women became men and all the men became women. So now and of course the God became a goddess. So now we have a narrative where the divine influence is passing through a mother-daughter lineage. Okay, the stories remain the same. So when you think about the stories, of the Bible, and many of them are very difficult, that difficult remains there. But now we negotiated on mostly on women's terms. On the other hand, men now are associated with the family, and we have a rise of a new kind of father in Toratah who is very family oriented. So this is the kind of basic method. In the stories we'll learn today, which are a portion from Genesis 2 and Genesis 3, the stories of the creation of the Chovah, the Eve, and the Adam, and the expulsion, or what we call the birth from Eden. The characters swapped roles. So now it is the Elohim who creates the Chovah, the Eve, and from her, never mind, I won't say anymore, let you enjoy the, what happens in the text itself. So Tamar?
Hi, everyone. So I suggest, Yael, I'm excited to see your faces too. So let's begin with the first slide that will just introduce us to three characters that we will meet soon. And in order to minimize the shock, we'll just introduce at least these three important figures. So the first one is Elohim. We know that the divine has two names in the Bible. So in Toratah, instead of Elohim, which is the plural God, we have Elohim. It's not only plural goddesses, it's playing even in more, you can understand this name in other ways too. It can split into the two Hebrew words, Elu, Hen. These are, or Elu, Hen in the meaning of yes, as if the divine approves what she created and looks at everything and says yes for everything she had created. Also in this word Elohim, there are the words in Hebrew, me, ani, Elah, goddess, Ain, nothing. So there's a lot of room to mysticism or other realms of commentary. The other name of the divine in Toratah, instead of Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey, instead of Jehovah, her name is Tehovah, because Jehovah, or Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey, is the way every word in male that relates to the future begins, with the vowel Yud. We begin all these words that has to do with the future with the feminine beginning, which is Taf. So the way we have, instead of Yitzchak, there is Titzchak. Instead of Yosef, there is Tosef. So instead of Jehovah, Yud Hey Vav Hey, there is Tehovah. Also, instead of Hallelujah, there is Hallelutah or Hallelnata. So it's awkward at the beginning, and after a few chapters, you totally get used to it. And the next weird name that we have to get used to is the Chova. So these chapters that describe the creation of the world and of humanity begins in the Bible with Adam. The word Adam means also the first man, but all humanity, or the beginning of humanity. And then along the Bible, Bnei Adam are people, and even today in Hebrew, when you want to talk about humanity, it's always in the masculine with the word Adam. But we changed it, and the first creature that you will see now that is being created in the divine's image is the Chova. So we took Chava, we changed it, it's the same letters, but we just changed the sound to Chova. Chova has to do with experiencing. So the meaning of the first human thing that was created by the divine, the attribute that is most important is the experiencing. And in that sense, we're similar to the divine. So what does it say about the divine? There's a lot of theology to explore from there. And the word Adam would appear only twice, parallel to the fact that the word Chava appears only twice in the Bible. And that's all. So from now on, humanity will be the daughters of the Chova. It will include men, of course, but this is a different perspective. There's a feminine divine that creates this femininity, or all humanity that is will always be named in feminine terms. And from there on, let's see what happens. So Yael will read Genesis chapter 2 slowly for us. We will do it only in English, but you can see the Hebrew on the right. And then I will summarize it a little, and we'll discuss the new meanings of this reading, and then we'll move to the third chapter.
Okay, Toratah, Genesis 2. And Tehovah, so we're going to have only 4 verses from Genesis 2. And Tehovah Elohim took the Chovah and laid her down in the tender garden to care for her and protect her. And Tehovah Elohim directed the Chovah, saying, of every tree of the garden eat, you shall eat. But from the tree of knowledge of good and bad, you shall not eat from it. For on the day that you shall eat from it, death, you will die. And Tehovah Elohim said, it is not good that the Chovah is alone. I will make her an aid opposite her. And Tehovah Elohim created out of the soil every animal of the field and every bird of the skies, and brought them to the Chovah to see what she would call them. And all that the Chovah would call a living creature is its name. And the Chovah called out names to every beast and bird of the skies, and to every animal of the field. But for the Chovah, she did not find an aid opposite her. And Tehovah Elohim dropped to sleep upon the Chovah, and she slept. And she took one of her sides and closed flesh beneath it. And Tehovah Elohim built from the side she had taken from the Chovah a man, and brought him to the Chovah. And the Chovah said, this who pulses is bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. This will be called man, because from a woman he was taken. Therefore, a woman will leave her mother and father, and she will cling to her man, and they will become one flesh. And they were both naked, the Chovah and her man, and were not ashamed.
Yael, can you bring back the slide before?
Mhm.
So let's just go together and notice a few new things before we share with the experience. First, you may notice that in the Hebrew, the numbers of the verses are weird. In the Bible, it's Pasuk Tet Vav and Tet Zayin, but we don't have these numbers in Toratah, because this Yud Hey and Yud Vav in Toratah do not mean the name of God anymore. The name of God is Tehovah. So we brought back the old numbers. It's just a tiny thing, but it means that everything is just, the tiny shift changes a lot of things around it. So the story of today begins with a feminine goddess that puts this creature that she created in the tender garden. We just translated Gan Eden. Before that, the name of Gan Eden is Gan Eden Mikedem. So we translated it the primordial tender garden. And I don't know how it feels to you, but for us it feels like a place in our body, a very safe place for the Chovah. And the first thing she tells this creature is not to eat from something, which is weird if you think that you have a baby and the first thing you do with the baby is to warn her from not eating something and pointing at the specific thing. It sounds either a warning or an invitation. And the divine notices that the Chovah doesn't feel good being alone. Maybe there is something so similar between the Chovah and the divine projecting her loneliness on the Chovah. I don't know, but she wants to help the Chovah to have someone to support her and be with her, be there for her. So the first thing they try are all the animals. And how do the Chovah supposed to figure out which animal would be the match for her? She has to name the animals. So the act of naming is the main activity in this chapter. It's very, very important because the relationship between the first woman and the first man soon will be around naming. So the Chova is doing what the divine offered her or asked her, and she does not find match someone that will help her. Yael, can you move please to the second? So she doesn't find the aid opposite her. And Elohim is doing this surgery, taking a side from the Chova. You have noticed that we translated a side and not a rib, because Tsela in the Pshat, in the plain meaning of Tsela in the Bible is side. When we're talking about the sides of the tabernacle, we use the word Tsela too. So it has nothing to do with a rib, nor like Chazal were discussing what this specific part, was it the tail or the head? So it wasn't either of them, it was a side of the Chova. The divine, the Elohim is taking this side and bringing it to the Chova. The Chova notices something special in this creature that was being brought to her. We have translated in the Bible the way the first expression, the word that the Adam says when he sees for the first time the Isha, he's saying Ze hapa'am. But we changed the Nikud, and now the Chova is saying Ze hapo'em, because the meaning of Ze hapa'am, the original in the Bible, the first thing that when the man sees the woman, he's saying Ze hapa'am, this time. But we just changed a little bit the Nikud, that's all, which is totally legitimate, because the Nikud didn't come originally with the Torah. It was a commentary that was sanctified later. So we translated Ze hapo'em. Hapo'em is the one that pulses. She notices something in him, something that moves him, that enables him to live, and it's something similar to her. It's the same thing that keeps them alive. So she wants to be a part of him, she wants to be with him, and she names him a man. Why does she name him a man? Because he was taken from a woman. So she names herself a woman. This is very interesting. The word name appeared man before a woman, but the Chova was the first name of both of them together. And then this interesting verse 24, therefore that's why a woman would leave her mother and a father. So the separation is ascribed to a woman. She's taking the man. And in all the Toratah later on, you will see that women are taking men and marrying them and knowing them sexually. It's the women that are creating the homes, are the matriarchs. They run the home inside and outside, while the men will need to have daughters to have any status, and will be sometimes very good or interesting fathers. And both of them are naked, and they're not shy about it. So this is the first part. Let's open, let's take off.
Let's take 2 questions, then we'll read the second chapter, and then we can, open it to all questions. So, and you can raise your hand also using the emoji, Carol. Carol?
Hi, I'm curious about how you decided on your Hebrew forms. I know, for example, that there are groups that use the term Elohima. So do you have a process? Do you have previous people that you built on their work? I'm very curious about that.
Thank you. So grammatically, the plural of Elohim is Elohot. That would be the grammatical opposite. In Hebrew, if you write Elohot without the vowelization, you get also Elohut, which I felt was becoming too abstract. I actually came up with Elohim. And for me, the way I arrived at it was through, I arrived to making Toratah from over 10 years of Kabbalah studies. And in one of the commentaries about the first verse of Genesis, the word Elohim was understood as a compound word of Elohim, these are. And what it means is that our ability to cognitively say about something, this is, or these are, it means that we understand ourselves as separate from it. So it's a kind of mechanism for multiplying through division. And when we look at the first chapter, immediately what comes after Elohim is the skies and the land. So we see that separation manifest immediately after that name is introduced. And so Hem with an M at the end refers to everything that is male in the language. And you know, Hebrew is completely binary. So now the default, everything that is them is now referring first to everything that is female. So everything that is female is now brought into the center of our attention. That's how I arrived at Elohim. But I welcome all variations, because what basically these various forms that we're seeing now emerge is it refers to a growing desire to see feminine divine more present in our culture. So I think every time somebody comes up with something, I think it's good. I personally welcome it. Thank you, Carol. Ellen? Hey, Ellen.
Hi. I'm just so blown away by this. It's so beautiful and really, really just mind-blowing, and creates a whole new visual imagination in my mind. But I want to pick up on something you just said, which is about the binary and Hebrew, and wondering, given the moment that we're in our worlds, about looking at beyond the binary, and particularly in this set of verses, could you talk a little bit about how and if you struggled with that, and how you're thinking about that in the context of what you're doing?
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you. So in our culture, we know a lot about the male-centered language. Our culture is built, first of all, from male, and then the female becomes this other sort of default. What I've learned, that if we go from this to gender neutral, we get an extension of the known, which is the male-centered language, without building the other bookend of female-centered language in our mythology. We don't know where the end is. So I feel we can't really do an authentic gender neutral without our imagination immediately defaulting to male. So to do that, we need to build imagination in the female form as central. Then we can really talk about, all of us can experience what happens when gender becomes neutral. So, but I really also was wondering, in Hebrew, we don't have enough language, grammar to actually do gender neutral, but in English we do. And I really struggled for quite a while how to do this in English. And then I came up with this, which taught me tremendously a lot, actually. I made a gender neutral form in English for the story of the binding of the child. And the way I approached it was by translating the names into their meanings. So if Abraham means high father and Emrama means high mother, this became high parent. Okay, the Yitzchak, he will laugh. Titzchak, she will laugh. They will laugh. So now we read a sentence like, And high parent took the wood of the burnt offering and laid it on they will laugh their child, and they took the fire in the. So this is how I arrived at a gender neutral form, which is super, super interesting as well. The bottom line is this: the gender neutral form is not my project to do, because it's not I don't walk that walk. This is for somebody else to do, people who feel that with all of their being. I'm going to take care of, this form in the Hebrew, because the Hebrew I really feel very strongly. And then, it's just another step in that journey that we have to understand these stories. So that's the kind of, so thank you. Let's go back to and read now the third chapter, because we'll read the whole third chapter. And I would like for volunteers, people to step and read a page, because there's several pages. And then we'll see what happens there. Now we're going to enter the primordial tender garden. Okay, so here we go. Okay, who'd like to start with the first page? Okay, go ahead. Hey, Esther. Can you see?
Okay, yes, it wouldn't let me unmute for a bit. And the serpentess was more naked than any animal of the field which the Jehovah Elohim had made. And she said to the man, even though Elohim said, do not eat from any tree in the garden. And the man said to the serpentess, of the fruit of the trees of the garden we may eat, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the middle of the garden, Elohim has said, you shall not eat of it, neither shall you touch it, or you shall die. And the serpentess said to the man, death, you shall not die. For Elohim knows that on the day you eat of it, your eyes shall open, and you shall be like Elohim, knowing good and bad. And the man saw that the tree was good for eating, and desirable to the eyes, and entices learning. He took from its fruit and ate, and he also gave to his woman with him, and she ate.
Who's next? Who would like to take it on? Howard?
Okay, and both their eyes opened, and they knew that they were naked. And they sewed a leaf of fig and made themselves girdles. And they heard the voice of Jehovah Elohim walking in the garden in the breeze of the day. And the Jehovah and her man hid themselves from the presence of Jehovah Elohim inside the tree of the garden. And Jehovah Elohim called to the Jehovah and said to her, where are you? And she said, I heard your voice in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, and I hid. And she said, who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten of the tree that I directed you not to eat from? And the Jehovah said, the man whom you gave to be with me, he gave me of the tree, and I ate. And the Jehovah Elohim said to the man, what is this you have done? And the man said, the serpentess lifted me, and I ate.
Next.
I can read.
Go ahead.
And Jehovah Elohim said to the serpentess, because you have done this, you are cursed more than all the beasts and more than any animal of the field. Upon your belly you will go, and you will eat dust all the days of your life. And I will put enmity between you and the man, and between your fruit of the womb and his seed. They shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise their heel. To the man she said, I shall greatly multiply your pain and your impregnation. In pain you shall father daughters, and your desire shall be to your woman, and she shall govern over you. And to the Jehovah she said, because you have listened to the voice of your man, and have eaten of the tree which I directed you not to eat from, cursed is the soil for your sake, and in pain you shall eat of it all the days of your life. Thorns and thistles it shall yield to you, and you shall eat the weed of the field.
Next. Joel?
Michal,
Michal, go ahead.
My hand is not lowered, but I think it will eventually. In the sweat of your face, you shall eat bread till you return to the soil, for from it you were taken. For you are dust, and to dust you shall return. And the Chovah called her man's name, Adam, because he was the father of all living. And Tehovah Elohim made for the Chovah and her man skin covering and clothed them. And Tehovah Elohim said, indeed, the Chovah has become like one of us, knowing good and bad, and now she may reach her hand and take also from the tree of life and eat and live forever. And Tehovah Elohim sent her away from the gentle garden to till the soil from which she was taken. And she banned the Chovah, and she placed before the gentle garden kovot and the blaze of the turning sword to guard the path to the tree of life.
Thank you. All right.
So let's go back to the first part of the chapter. So of course, the first thing we notice is the serpentess, and maybe just shaking the story that we have been reading for so long. Just this little change already can maybe enable us to see the serpentess in a different light. If these creatures are in this tender, safe place in the divine, so maybe the serpentess can be the umbilical cord that should be cut very strongly soon. But at the beginning, she's I don't want to use the word tempting. She's speaking to the man and convincing him in an interesting way that he shouldn't be afraid to eat from the only tree that not him, the Chovah was told, was directed not to eat from. And just imagine yourself 3, 4 years old, maybe 2 years old, growing up on this story, that it was the man that ate first and gave the woman, that was a serpentess, that the divine was a female mother figure. Where does it take you? Is when the atmosphere changes, does it impact the meaning? This is the conversation we're going to have soon. And the man...
1 second. I would just like to add that the word for serpent or serpentess also shares a root with guessing or the ability to assess, because what happens here in this very moment, as soon as the serpentess arrives and has this conversation, she gives the man the ability to assess. She gives him a certain kind of autonomy by introducing the doubt. Now he has to assess, evaluate the situation, and make a decision. This is a part of growing. That the beginning of separation from the mother is starting to happen.
Let's move to the next page, please. So the woman is eating and they notice that they are naked, and now they hear the voice of Elohim, Tehovah Elohim, going in the garden and hiding from her. And we all know the question, Ayeka, but now it's Ayek, where are you? She actually speaks to the Chovah in the feminine, Ayech, because the relationship in Toratah is between the divine and women, usually, while the men are supposed to be the aid, opposite the women, to help them in their relationship, their direct relationship with the divine. The divine is speaking all the time in the feminine, and we'll talk about, I can tell you about a fascinating fight that I had over Shabbos and over the Shabbos table about how does it feel when the divine speaks to you directly or to all the men around you. So here it's a direct speak. She's asking the Chova, where are you? And the Chova answers, because these are the main relationship in Toratah, and she says, I'm hiding from you. The man that you have given to me gave me from the tree. And the man, when the divine, when Tehovah asks the man, what have you done? We changed a little bit in that translation. It's not the usual translation. In Hebrew, you can see it's the last sentence that the man blames the serpentess. Hanechasha hisiatni vaochel. Usually the word in Hebrew is hishiatni. The dot in the shin is on the right and not on the left. Totally different meaning between hishiatni and hisiatni. We just moved the nekuda, the point, and it changed the meaning. That's what a midrash is, but it's also the pshat of the, you can say that it's also the pshat. Instead of saying about the serpentess, it tempted me, so I've eaten, he's saying, she lifted me, so I ate. She has given me something that let me feel higher, better, bigger. She did something good to me, the serpentess. This is how he understands the situation. Let's move to the next page. So now I don't want to call it punishments. I want to call it the results. What are the results of the eating? So the serpentess, we know, is going to crawl on the floor instead of on her legs before, but there's also going to be a total separation between her and humanity, and they're going to threaten each other from now on. So there is a cut here that is irreversible. Then the man is the result of his eating from the tree is his fertility. It's not going to be easy. And we can see in the coming stories that all the fathers in Toratah, not all of them, most of them they have a problem with impregnating. And later on, other men too. For instance, Yael and I were working today on the Haftarah of Rosh Hashanah, the story of Elkanah, Hannah, and Pnina. And now it's the man with his two. It's the woman with her two husbands. One can impregnate her and the other cannot. Instead of Hannah and Pnina, there is Han and Pnin. So this vulnerability around fertility in Toratah is ascribed to men, and the need of having a daughter, and to keep this daughter alive and have a good fortune. This is the role of men. And women are outside, either in the fields or riding the horses and running the kingdom and being the prophetess, and of course the warriors, and all the good and bad roles outside. But the connection to the land is also very strong. They have these powers, these capabilities. That's what they do. And this is going to be now difficult for them because of, as a result of the separation. They're not going to be safe in this tender garden anymore. They're going to be in the rough world where we are. So then the last slide. look at verse 20. The Chovah heard the different results that are going to happen because of the eating of the wrong tree. And she understands that her husband has the potential, the powers to fertile, to impregnate her and to become a father of all the creature, of all humanity. So she gives him another name, not just Ish like she has given him last chapter. Now she's calling him Adam. And this name will appear just twice, here and at the beginning of next chapter, and that's all. So it's in Hebrew, in the Torah, in the Bible, the Torah had a little midrash in this verse. It used to be that the Adam named his wife Chava, ki hi aita em kol chai. He called her Chava because she was the mother of all living. Chava from the word chai. But now it looks weird. She's naming him Adam because he's the father of all chaya. What's the connection between the word Adam and chaya? So this is open for midrashim. But in the word Adam, you can find the word dam, blood, and also the word ed, which is, I don't know how to say it in English.
Moisture. Moisture.
That comes from the land.
From the land, yeah, that's coming up from the land, yes.
Okay. So it's like the neshama, like the... So it's open to midrashim, but there is connection between the word Adam that will appear only twice and living. Of course, blood from now on will be a problem of men in Toratah. The bleeding, the machzor, how do you say machzor in English?
The
menstruation of women doesn't exist in Toratah because we ascribed the bleeding to men. Men can also bleed from their penises, unfortunately. So this causes tum'ah and not the bleeding of women anymore. These statuses of what causes holiness or tum'ah totally changes. The biological functions of men and women, the way we understand our bodies totally changes in Toratah. We want to talk today about Brit Milah or about sex, but all of these things are shifting to a new, you have new eyeglasses to watch reality and to watch yourself inside and outside. So I'm going back to the chapter, the divine dresses them, and now she's sending them out of the tender garden and leaves in the entrance the kruvot instead of the kruvim, these let's say it's not clear here what are these. There are different commentaries, especially mystical commentaries to what they are. The statues of the kruvim were in the temple. Now we're talking about kruvot. But the kruvot means that it's both female and male. Now, whenever we say something in plural, it's in the feminine. And she leaves there also in the entrance the blaze of the turning sword, which may be used in interesting ways if we ever want to go back there.
I have a couple things to add, and then we'll open it to questions. When Te'ova Elohim dresses the Chovah and her man with skin, this is the first time the word skin is mentioned. So we can, I mean, in the pictures, there's always kind of like a furry skin, but we can definitely read it as actual, what we call skin. Before that, there is bone, there is flesh, there is breath, there's dust, but there's no skin. So just before she sends them out, she covers them with skin as protection. She completes the creation of these humans, preparing them for what comes next. So you can see the whole series of what we consider normally as punishment as labor pain, separation pain, and preparing them to the world that they're going to meet outside the primordial garden, which means that the separation is inevitable. This needs to happen. Otherwise, we don't have chapter 4. So this is all dependent, everything else that has come after that is dependent on this birth. All right, so let's open to questions because we don't have a lot of time, but we definitely want to hear from you. So I see Judy, you have your hand up.
Yeah, okay.
I was volunteering to read.
Ah,
That was an old hand.
all right. Do you still have a question or no?
Well, I asked in chat about the serpent, where I never thought of the serpent as having a gender.
Mm-hmm.
And you wrote in Hebrew, it appears in the male form as a male character. And I asked whether there's a different Hebrew word for a female serpent. I mean, why do you, I really never thought of the serpent as male.
Yeah, so it definitely appears as a male character. The word in Hebrew is nachasha, nachash, and nachasha.
Okay.
The question is really, why did we change the genders of animals too?
Yes.
We've noticed, yes, so we've noticed that animals are characters and they have roles in the stories, and changing their genders may change the atmosphere and even the meaning of different stories. I can send you, in 2 minutes, I'll find the link and I'll put it in the chat. In our website, I have a blog, and one of the posts that I posted there last year was about 2 animals that we've changed their gender after the flood. Nocha used to be Noah, but now it's Nocha. It's a woman. She sent out from the Teva, from the ark. She sent the dove and the raven, but now it's different. Now it's a female raven and a masculine dove. So what does it change anything? So read the blog later and see that even these little shifts even these little changes can open huge doors in our brains. But I'll just give you one example for another animal that I taught last week. I'm teaching now the rabbinical school in Argentina, the Seminario Rabbinico. They asked me to teach a course on Dirshuni, the Midrashim, but I couldn't hold myself and I shared with them a piece from Toratah too. So we were talking about, for Rosh Hashanah, we read the story of Akedat Yitzchak, the binding of Isaac. We read a lot of women's midrash on it, and in the end I brought in the version from Toratah. It's the mother, Emrahama, taking her daughter Yitzchak to Har Morita to slaughter her or to sacrifice her, and the female divine. It's like twice mother-daughter's relations between the divine and Emrahama, between Emrahama and Yitzchak, and the chapter ends that Emrahama gives up on sacrificing her daughter, and she notices a ewe in the bush. A female sacrificed an animal to slaughter. And one of the students there jumped and he said, it broke my heart. It broke my heart. Because we use the word Rachel in Hebrew. Instead of Ail in the bush, it was Rachel. So for him, it was layers of other associations. And so sometimes these tiny shifts or just open a door if you want to go there, if it has to do with a Rachel that you know, with what Rachel means to you. It's all invitations to new commentaries and new understandings.
Thank you.
Han?
Me?
Yeah.
Okay. one question and then a comment. The question is from the fourth, well, the part that I was reading, that the Chovah has become like one of us. Who's us? And why us? That's number one. And what this does for me is it makes it less like a Bible story and much more mythic and Kabbalistic, and it just adds layers and layers. So it's really, whew.
Yeah. So the advantage or disadvantage, depending how you look at it, of Toratah is that we don't have midrash, we don't have commentary, there's no rabbinic tradition to Toratah, there's no Kabbalah to Toratah. It's all up for creation. It's an open invitation to create commentary, midrash, for this perspective of the story. Just putting it out there. So all of you at the moment right now are first generation commentators of Toratah. Tamar, do you want to answer the ask question?
Yes, so it was there all the time that the divine speaks to herself in the plural, not the only time, especially in the first chapters. These are very interesting chapters. There is always the inner speech or inner talk in the divine. And Yael asked me one day, so who knows better the divine than the divine? Who really tells us the story of these chapters and exposes us to the inner speak in the heart of Tehovah. Later on, she will regret for creating the world and would like to bring a flood. So there are a few verses of inner speech in the story of Racha. So yes, it's open.
The narrator is the elephant in the room. Who is the narrator? And how do they know so much about the inner works of how Tovah Elohim thinks and feels? Tamar, I'm sorry, I jumped into your...
Just regarding the plural, so maybe what we think about monotheism as what Judaism brought to the world, so maybe it doesn't. Maybe the beginning of the Bible is not monotheistic. Maybe she consults with other divine entities. Maybe it's the inner voices in her, like us. We are as if each of us is one person, but we really have different intuitions, many times contradictory intuitions in us. So it's interesting to ask, what is the divine? And if we're in her image, so what does it mean when we speak plural?
Martin?
Could you say more of a word about how gendered language, how words become gendered? In other words, is it a convention without any particular meaning? To someone who speaks a non-gendered language, it implies that the feminine and masculine forms have something to do with gender. But if you just call them form 1 and form 2, would it still have the emotional impact of calling them the feminine form and the masculine form? Why would a table be one gender and a pen be another gender?
It's a great question. So when we were working that, I actually was interested in that question. And it turns out that it's arbitrary. Why, unless it's biologically related, why a table in one language would be female form and another language would be male is, as far as we know, arbitrary. But it does play a role in the way, it's kind of like an undertone that gives us more and more information. So for example, because of that, we changed the genders of a few words in Hebrew. So the word for land in Hebrew is feminine, female, it's a female form. We change it to a male form because we wanted to change, like, for example, you might have heard Eretz Zavat Chalav Udvash. Now it's Eretz Zav Chalav Udvash. Why did we do that? There is a metaphor. That metaphor of Mother Earth gets sometimes blurred with Earth is Mother, the kind of point of view that you get to saw both the earth and the women, that kind of perspective. We wanted to unsettle it a little bit. And by changing that to a male form, now we separate the woman from the land, that kind of blurriness. And now it's women walking a male, sort of male land. And we felt that it was really powerful. The other word we changed the gender for was for people. So in Hebrew, people, is in the male form, and it's because the relationship between the divine in Toratah, we call his Torah, in Toratah, the male God has such a strong and deep relationship with the people. The male form moves through that very smoothly. So we wanted to maintain that kind of smoothness by calling people, presenting it in the female form. Of course, all this detail disappears in the English, but it's really powerful in the Hebrew. So that's what
I would like to add, I would like to add both from all the words. There are millions of words in Hebrew that are either male or female. We did change men and women and animals, country and city and people. That's all. I want to say country, land. The image that appears many times in the Bible is that it's, I don't know how to say it in English, Eretz Be'ula, that someone raped it or penetrated it. So we wanted to release, to get rid of this image and enable the land to have, that we can have different relationship with the land. And also, even worse, city, in the prophets, many times the city, for instance, Jerusalem, represents the whole people of Israel. And the imagery that the prophets are giving is that that Jerusalem is a prostitute. She's a hooker because she betrayed the divine. She was married to God. The people of Israel were married to God. They are the feminine, and they betrayed him. So they would be, they will get sexual punishments. I can give you the specific places in the prophets. This is a very popular image. So by changing Jerusalem to a male, so it's either that the male is being raped and being abused, and we should talk about men being abused and not hide this anymore. And it's also about men's pain. For instance, you're invited to see in our website the first chapter of the Scroll of Eicha. Lamentation is the scroll of that we read in Tisha B'Av. So in the Bible, Yerushalayim is sitting and crying, and dim'ata alechia, tearing and sobbing. And in Toratah, Yerushalayim is the name of Jerusalem. It's a male city, and he's crying because he's been abused horribly, both by the divine and by the other nations around him. And there is room for vulnerability of men.
I want to respond to Carol's comment in the chat. So if we would have only changed the god to a goddess, what we would be ending with is a goddess creating a patriarchy. So in a way, it's worse. So it's only because the god or the goddess, this is really an abstract entity. We all project into it a version of ourselves, right? And where the dynamics really happen is in the social fabric. So unless we flip everything, we can't really get this new mind formed. That's why just changing the name God to goddess is just simply not enough. It doesn't take us where we want to go in to be able to see and consider this language and how it forms a worldview in us.
Yeah, I would just like to point at something that Yael and I were talking about for many, many hours. Toratah is not a feminist book. It's not an egalitarian book. Women there are running the world transcendentally and immanently. I mean, it's a matriarchal book. It's not moral book. Also, they behave like men. It's you can see that it wasn't a woman writing it, even though women think differently, and maybe a woman would write the same. But there is no. I grew up in the feminist world in university, and there is no feminist ethics there, or feminist theology, or feminist psychology. The narrative is the Bible's narrative. But because it's written artificially and women get all these roles, it just gives us new images of what men and women can be, and what the divine can be, and what relationship can be between humanity and the divine. It's the only not patriarchal book that I know, because it was written artificially. Any other book that I know, even science fiction, it's always written, even subconsciously, from the experience of a patriarchal world, because that's all we know. Even if we have good intentions to change it, the default subconsciously will fall again into the same. For instance, what are the cause and יחסי סיבה ותוצאה? How do you say it? Yeah. Cause and effect. What is it to be? We fall again and again into the patriarchal imagery and understandings, but writing it artificially made it to a non-patriarchal book. And the imagery that it puts in front of us is very challenging for feminists too, because it's not a feminist book. We all have to work while reading it.
It's a training. The one thing that I would like to put out there is that I see Toratah as 1.0. Our library, our Jewish library, is lacking books that codify women's experience as sacred. And so where would we start? Where to start? The only place I understood to start with was what I was brought up with, was Genesis. That's the place where the beginning, where our worldview is formed. That's the language. So Toratah is 1.0, and maybe it creates enough language for new books to come that will define how we understand this in perhaps a freer or more able or capable way. But we'll see where it goes. I think that in terms of content, it's not feminist, but in terms of intention and result, I think it very much is. Because what Toratah allows us to do is realign woman in relation to divine, which could be maximum version of self or something like that, as opposed to most of our feminist, or at least the one that I was introduced to, feminist response is always in relation to men. So it kind of breaks that apart. Now men is there to support that relationship of woman to divine. Okay, so that's a kind of reshuffling of the primary relationship and the secondary relationship. Now, if you put the two together, which is really amazing, that opens up a whole other world of possibilities in terms of commentary and even understanding, then you get a situation where both have, or all have, relationship with a divine, and all have helpmates to help them maximize and optimize that relationship. Now we can talk about a theology that is reciprocal, because both and all are on the same level in relation to the divine. So I think that's a really good, it feels to me a really good vision for a future. But without building Toratah in our consciousness, we don't have the tools to think in these kind of reciprocal terms. So, Howard, how are we doing on time?
I think we're close to finish. If you want to do any kind of summation, you can, and then I think we should probably.
Okay, so just let me tell you where we're at the moment. This year, if we finished Chumash Toratah, the first 5 books, there are on the website, they're in Hebrew. We finished translating the first 24 chapters in Genesis. You can find them also on the website. We have bilingual versions of the book of Mordechai, the scroll of Mordechai, which was, you know, as the scroll of Esther. So this is another story where we swap the roles. It's rare, but it does happen. And then we also have, what else do we have, Tamar?
Megillat Rea instead of Megillat Ruth. The scroll of Ruth now is the scroll of Rea. It's a guy that stayed with his father-in-law and didn't leave him.
Beautiful story about that relationship. We are working on a small publication of the first 6 chapters in Hebrew and English with commentary and lesson plans. So hopefully, I don't know how long it'll take, but we want to make that available. I'm also working on to drop a collection of NFTs of the first 3 chapters, where each NFT is a verse. And I'm looking to translate it to also French and Spanish. So if you know translators, let me know. If you yourself know and you want to kind of dive into that with us, that would be amazing. What else do we have going on, Tamar?
Soon we're having
October 2nd, we're doing an event on the Bet Toratah side of Haftarot, a special event for Haftarot for Rosh Hashanah. Wow. The stories are really wow. So yes, please mark it in your calendar. Howard offered to send a link to that. And so we'll take care of that. If you want to stay in touch with us, sign up on the website. If you want to help us, you can donate to Bet Toratah, or you can, offer, your help in other ways. And yeah, thank you for having us. It's always such a delight to talk about this and share this and see friendly faces.
Well,
I miss you.
Thank you so much, both of you. I mean, this has just been a great privilege. I don't know that I've ever had this feeling of encountering very familiar texts and taking away the familiarity and having to approach it really with with a very different consciousness. It's so profound. I'm really grateful to both of you for your tremendous vision and also incredibly hard work. I know that what we don't see is the hours and hours of struggling with this language. So we will send out an email tomorrow with a link to the Beit Toratah website and also information about that October 2nd event that Yael just mentioned. And I want to wish all of you a really sweet and healthy new year. May it be continue to be a better one for all of us. It's been a hard time.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you all.
Be well. Thank you.